Hey everyone, James Reeves. I'm here with Dave Matheny. He's the founder of Silencer Shop. We're going to be talking about something called the Big Beautiful Lawsuit. Now, Dave, before we get into that, tell everyone about yourself. How did Silencer Shop start?
Yeah, it really started in 2010. It started because of my son, who was born 100% deaf in his right ear. Bought a silencer for him, had a bad experience, and actually two silencers from two different places had bad experiences. And I thought, I'm just going to spin this up, help people do transfers. That was my original goal. I wasn't even thinking quit my job, right? And it took off.
Yeah, sure. And you guys have really revolutionized the way the silencer business has worked between the kiosks, which, just so happens we have a kiosk. Well, how'd that get there? Yeah. We've got a Silencer Shop kiosk back there. Doing the single shot trusts, and the way that you guys have the website set up, the way that you partner with other companies in the industry. So it's funny to me to hear you say it, because honestly, like, we've never had this conversation.
Yeah.
We've never talked about this. So that to me is funny. And now you're getting into advocacy.
I'm going to say, you remember 41F? What was that, 2014? That's
when
we first started started working with this stuff, kind of trying to fight 41F when that was coming along. And then we went through a phase where ATF, we got to a point where we were the biggest player in the market, and ATF would just target us. And we almost ended up doing it as a defensive measure. And then really in the last year or two, we started looking at ways to just decrease regulation altogether. Let's get rid of the NFA. This is too big of a risk for the industry, is the reality.
And you've started a foundation, right?
Yes, that's right, Silencer Shop Foundation.
What does that do?
Get silencers, SBRs, those types of weapons out of the NFA, right? And then also fix some of these state issues that are out there. So I think most people don't realize that if we were to pull silencers out of the NFA, there are like 16 or 17 states where silencers would become illegal. So as we're trying to pull them out of the NFA, we're trying to fix that issue in those states.
Right. When did you start the foundation?
Really this year. It's pretty recent.
But you guys are, again, a colossus in the industry, so I imagine you're going to have a substantial amount of resources available to you for advocacy. And at the same time, you're also going to be able to, I would think, manage an effective grassroots campaign. I just went to your website last night just to have a look at it. I like that I can go and donate, or I can do round up.
That's right.
If I'm buying from Silencer Shop,
Yep.
and then make a contribution towards the fight that you guys are fighting for Second Amendment rights, which is what we're going to talk about today. We're talking about what you guys have called the Big Beautiful Lawsuit,
That's right.
which I think is hilarious. Filed July 4 of this year, the same day the Big Beautiful Bill was signed. Big Beautiful Bill comes out, and they say, you know what? $0 tax stamps. You can just now get a suppressor, short barrel rifle, SBS, whatever, $0. And I know a lot of us were crestfallen with that outcome, because we were expecting complete and total deregulation. Still regulated items, just a $0 tax.
That's right.
And then I'm reading the news, and then I see that there's some asshole who's now saying, okay, I like this game. I'm going to make it a $4,700 tax to adjust for inflation, because back in the 1930s or whenever this was put in place, $200 was like $5,000. I think it needs to be adjusted.
You're right. The original intent of the Big Beautiful Bill was to get silencers out of the NFA altogether. I think SBRs, everybody always thought that was a stretch. We wound up getting SBRs and silencers, but only set to $0. So we got more than we expected on SBRs, but less than we expected on silencers, if that makes sense. The risks, and there are really two big risks moving forward, right? What we tried to do is use this reconciliation process to essentially strike, people say HPA, but it was never actually HPA. We were just striking.
HPA being the Hearing Protection Act.
Yeah, that's right. So we were just going to strike the word silencer from the NFA definitions, right? It's the risk that would introduce is the anti-gun people next time around come in, they add it back in, or they add in AR-15s,
right,
or semi-automatic weapons. So
and make it a $5,000 tax.
And that's the other part of it. So the tax now has become a political tool, right? So we drop it to $0, they raise it to $5,000. We drop it to $0, they raise it to $5,000, and that's horrible.
Sure.
I think at this point we're kind of on a clock where we got to get these things out of the NFA altogether, right? I think that's the only safe approach going forward.
There are a lot of countries with much more restrictive gun laws than the United States that you can go to the hardware store and buy a firearm silencer.
Oh, yeah.
There are other countries with far more restrictive laws than the U.S. vis-a-vis firearms, where it's mandatory if you're shooting outside to shoot with a suppressor. As far as the United States goes, we see this as one of the, like having some of the broadest laws and the broadest rights in terms of firearm ownership, but at the same time, we've got these really taboo restrictions on silencers, maybe because of Hollywood, maybe because we've had this regulation for almost a century, where now it's like, oh my God, silencers are so bad. Where even in countries like, say, New Zealand, I mean, if I remember correctly, I think you can just go in, even though you can't own an AR-15 there now, you can go in and buy a silencer just over the counter.
Most of the world.
Yeah.
And I always say for us, it was just an accident of history. Silencers wound up in 1934 being regulated under the NFA, which it really was almost an afterthought that they all wound up in there. But because nobody had any exposure to them for, as you said, almost 100 years, everything we know about silencers we learned from TV.
Right.
Which is just false.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
The worst place.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate. Now we're trying to combat that, both teach people what silencers actually are and make them just more available so there's less misinformation about them.
Right.
Right.
And that leads into the big, beautiful lawsuit.
Right.
Let's talk about that. You guys have sued the government. You've sued the ATF, DOJ,
Yeah.
right? And not just you. There's a whole
That's
bunch
right.
of plaintiffs that deserve props, and we'll probably mention them, like B&T,
Silencer Co.
Yeah.
Silencer Co. has been a big part of the HPA effort from the very beginning. GOA, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
FRAC. So
You got a whole bunch of hands on deck.
That's right.
To try to get silencers removed for good from the NFA. That's the point, right?
That's right. The opportunity we have here, so the courts have ruled that you can regulate something using a tax. That's how the NFA exists in the first place. That's why it wasn't struck down. They're saying you weren't making these items illegal, you're just taxing them, right? But they've also said you can't regulate something with a tax that collects no revenue. So now that you've got a $0 tax, that opens a window for us to essentially counter the underlying legality of the NFA, at least when it comes to SBRs, silencers, SBSs, AOWs. We can essentially target the underlying reason the NFA is allowed to exist and get these items pulled out.
Right.
That's our goal.
Yeah, and look, I do my fair share of constitutional law. The tax power is not one that I've got to say that I'm super familiar with. And in fact, I was reading the lawsuit last night and I was learning a little bit. I guess my understanding then is the thrust of the argument in this lawsuit is that the NFA is more or less the imposition of a tax. By reducing this tax to $0, well, now it's not really a tax, it's a law. It's not a tax, and that's the whole reason that this NFA $200 tax stamp process was started. Therefore, either it's unconstitutional. I mean, to me, I guess it would be unconstitutional, would be the argument.
That's right.
And so we just need to eliminate all these non-taxed items, I guess, SBRs, short barrel rifles, that's rifles with a stock, barrels under 16 inches, like short barrel rifles and silencers, remove them from the NFA. Is that all correct?
That's exactly right.
Who is the one who said, you know what, guys, I think this is a good idea and this is what we ought to do?
We were actually pushing for this really during the entire process. The objective of the big, beautiful bill was to get silencers out of the NFA, but the parliamentarian who kind of had the say over this whole thing was kind of saying all along she was going to say no to it, right? So unless they had ousted the parliamentarian to force it through, $0 was kind of what was coming down the pipe.
Right.
So we've been working on the lawsuit for a while.
Yeah,
right.
You guys knew it was coming. You filed it the same day
That's
that
right.
the big, beautiful bill was signed.
Yeah.
So you knew this was coming.
Yeah, I will say most of the legal work though was done on July 4th. So we had a whole team of lawyers sitting there just kind of wanting to leave and go hang out with their families, and we're like, no, we got to get this filed today.
Yeah, doing
Like,
it
there's
for
kind of a symbolic thing, right? They signed it on July 4th. We want a first possible day. We want to get it filed. It was an effort.
George Washington, Thomas Jefferson looking down from heaven at
That's
all
right.
these guys working while the kids are out, hitting each other in the face with bottle rockets
That's
and your
right.
cousin's hosing beers. Got it. Terrible, terrible way to spend the 4th of July,
right.
but I guess it's really important. You throw together a 16-page lawsuit and you file it. How do you think this is going to shake out? I mean, what? Let's walk that back. What's happened so far? You guys get together, you've got all your plaintiffs, you've got the GOA, you've got Silencer Shop, B&T, so on and so forth. Everyone getting together saying, hey, look, we need to do something about this. You file a suit July 4. You and I both know the wheels of justice, they turn slowly. As we sit here today on July 28, I doubt anything's happened.
That's right. Yeah, this stuff will move kind of slow. Right now, we're still trying to figure out how the DOJ is going to, defend. And they could really not defend at all. Mm-hmm. That's an option here. Mm-hmm. I think even if they don't defend, I think we still have to fight it through the courts. I don't think this is something that's going to happen overnight, but I'm hoping it actually gets resolved during Trump's term.
Mm-hmm. One issue, and this is one that I told you in advance that I wanted to talk about, I see a potential Commerce Clause issue. Now, for those of you who don't know what the Commerce Clause is, you kind of should, even if you're not. Con law is boring as shit, of course, we all know that. But that said, it's very important because there are only certain powers that the federal government has, the way that our government was set up. And one of those powers that the federal government explicitly has is to regulate interstate commerce. And that sounds like, what does that mean? Okay, well, anything that impacts commerce between the states, the federal government can regulate. You even have a case that we had to read about in law school from the Great Depression where there was a state law and it was about people domestically producing wheat and selling it domestically. This law only applies to our state and it only interests the farmers here and relates only to intrastate trade. Even then, the government came out and said, nope, because what you guys do domestically is still going to impact the interstate commerce of wheat. And therefore, we're going to go ahead and regulate your ass even though this is a state law. And we're going to find that you can't do that. So that's what I'm worried about here is the Commerce Clause is very broad.
Very broad.
And they could say, you know what? I think that the impact of silencers going across state lines, especially you guys, Silencer Shop, I mean, you guys are the guys. I mean, you send a silencer to every state where it's legal every week. I think you lose the lawsuit because it isn't just about tax. Yeah, that's part of it. But it's also about the regulation of interstate commerce.
When this initially went through the courts, the NFA, it was 100% about the tax, right? But now that they don't have the tax argument, they can actually switch their justification, right? And we also anticipate they'll switch to commerce laws.
Sure.
We have arguments for that. I've actually been told not to.
Yeah, I totally get it. From a legal strategy standpoint,
Yeah.
government, hey, government employees, hey, you guys turn off this video
Turn
right now.
off just a couple minutes, give us some time.
Put it on mute. No, that makes, from a litigation strategy standpoint, that makes complete and total sense to me. Let them bring it up. If they want to make that argument, then you guys are prepared for it. So
That's right.
How do you see this shaking out?
The courts have the next move. We're kind of waiting for them to assign judges and kind of get this moving. I mean, really, it's a waiting game at this point.
Yeah, sure. You're going to file an answer, or
That's
the
right.
government's going to file an answer, responsive pleadings. You're going to have your discovery conference. You're going to have your Rule 26 conferences, case management conference probably. I mean, a lot of nothing is going to happen in the next 90 days.
While we're waiting for the big beautiful lawsuit to shake out, we're simultaneously trying to get this through in another bill, right? So we're taking kind of two approaches during this window of Trump being president.
All right, and do we have anything tangible as it relates to that?
I think we have a good shot. So with the $0 tax, and I don't know if people really understand how offsets work in these bills. So if you have the HPA, for example, where you pull silencers out of the NFA, was the Congressional Budget Office gave that a $10.4 billion cost over 10 years. So if you pass that, if you add that to a bill, you have to come up with a $10.4 billion offset where you're either collecting more revenue or saving that money over the same 10-year period, right? Since they've now reduced the price to zero of the tax, we now have a $0 offset. So it's much easier to stick it into a bill and just have it as a rider. And then what we're targeting is actually the National Defense Authorization Act next year, NDAA. So I think there's a decent chance that we get this, we at least have a shot of getting it through that bill next year. Right, there's kind of this mentality, because we didn't get the full HPA, we just got the $0 tax, like this, we're gonna punish the lawmakers that got us the $0 tax. But it's these same lawmakers who are actually trying to do the right thing. They're working within the framework they've got, and they're the same ones that are gonna try to get us the removal of silencers, SBRs, completely from the NFA next year using the NDAA. So we really kind of have to be somewhat appreciative for the efforts they're making, right? It can't be all negative.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
No, I was disappointed, but at the same time, I understand how legislation works. I understand how politics work. Bird in the hand, two in the bush. What's great about that is we can take what we have right now, which is the $0 tax, and we can still go after two in the bush.
It gives us two routes that are very promising.
Yeah.
And within 2-3 years from now, the NFA could be gutted.
You know, who knows what could happen.
Right.
But I mean, obviously, fingers crossed. And Dave, I really want to say thank you for coming here to New Orleans, being at the Neutral Ground Gun Company, speaking with me about this. And I didn't warn you about this one. You're going to have to give me your top 3 favorite suppressors.
Oh, man.
Yeah, don't look at him. Don't you look at him.
Now I look at that side TI from Silencer Co. As far as traditional cans, I really like that. Obviously, I do like the rugged cans just in general. I just have always kind of I've liked them. The other, I really like the Q cans. So I tell you that, weirdly, at the 6.5 Creedmoor, the jumbo shrimp, it's hard to beat that thing, right? So yeah, top 3, those are probably not 3D printed ones. I think the 3D printed ones, you go into like the Hyperion. That thing's awesome.
It is pretty nice.
It's more expensive than everything else I've said, but man, that's an awesome can.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've got a lot of good options out there, in no small part thanks to you guys. How can they help you in this fight?
With the Silencer Shop Foundation and that roundup, we actually 100% of the money goes to this cause. So Silencer Shop is eating all the costs of the overhead. That money goes 100% to the cause.
Yeah,
right?
And someone can make a donation if they want to. They can go. What's the website?
SilencerShopFoundation.org.
Okay, SilencerShopFoundation.org. Someone can go there. They can just make a cash donation if they want to.
Yep.
Donating cash to an organization, not exactly the most fun thing, but we can go on and buy things from Silencer Shop, round up. That goes to you guys, and that helps you with this fight.
That's right, and 100% of those proceeds go to the cause.
Dave, thank you so much for what you're doing.
Yeah,
thank you for being here. No, we're grateful. I know that my viewers out there are grateful for not only what you do at Silencer Shop, but what you're doing now with the Silencer Shop Foundation. We wish you the best of luck. I know I'm going to support you. The viewers out there are going to support you as well. Everyone, thanks again for watching. Take care.